those times in which you just feel like you're just so tired that you just want to give up, where you come to the end of your rope, where you just like, you're running on empty? You know what those times are like, and you probably can relate to this. Perhaps several times in your life you're going to experience those times where you feel just so tired, like you're running on empty. Well, today's devotion is for you. Matthew wrote this in chapter 5, verses 1 to 3. One day, as he saw the crowds gathering, Jesus went up to the mountainside and sat down. His disciples gathered around him, and he began to teach them. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The poor in spirit are those who acknowledge their own helplessness and rely on God's power. They sense their spiritual need and find it supplied in the Lord. Or as one commentator puts it, the poor in spirit are those who, in absolute poverty of spirit, are solely dependent upon God. Such persons have no confidence in their own successes or achievements, for they enjoy the gift of God's acceptance and fellowship. Matthew wrote the Beatitudes in Greek, but Jesus spoke them in Aramaic. And when we look at the word poor, and when we combine the Aramaic and the Greek together, it means a person who realizes their own utter helplessness and who has put their whole trust in God. Is this your situation right now? Do you know of somebody who is at the end of their tether? Eugene Peterson, in his translation of the Message, puts verse 3 this way. He says, "You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and His rule." Think of a rope. That rope represents your security and your control, and most likely your hope. For most of your life situation, you have clung onto this rope, but you're starting to see it and the various parts of the rope just slip away. Your security, its control, until it gets to what appears to be the end of the rope. And there is no rope left. And you start to frantically cling into thin air. It is then that you realize and accept that you have nothing left. You have become poor in spirit. You have nothing else but God to cling to. Most likely you can relate to this. You've come to the end of your rope. Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are wearied and burdened, and I'll give you rest." Peter says in 1 Peter 5 verse 7, "Give all your worries and cares to God, for He cares about you." The contemporary English version reads the first part of Matthew 5 verse 3 this way: "God blesses those people who depend solely on Him." When you come to the end of your rope, dependence on God is needed. The Apostle Paul planted congregations in hostile areas. He wrote most of the New Testament letters. He converted many to the Lord and went on various missionary journeys. He was flogged and thrown into house arrest. He had a past that rivals many of those in our prisons today. He suffered through illness. Yet through all of this, he was one of the most significant of all the church leaders. And yet Paul wrote how he kept on preaching Christ so that many will come to mature in the faith. And then he wrote in Colossians 1 verse 29, "I work very hard at this as I depend on Christ's mighty power that works within me." If the mighty Apostle Paul had to depend upon God, how much more do we? When we come to the end of our rope and realize our own utter helplessness, we need to learn to put our whole trust in God. Then Jesus calls us blessed. This is quite a surprising comment here. Jesus says that the poor in spirit are blessed because they will experience the kingdom of heaven. That is, they will experience God's reign in their lives. The kingdom values and the kingdom's ways will reign in their lives. When there is no rope left to cling to, we become completely detached from things. For we know that things have not got in them that brings happiness and security. And we become completely attached to God. For we know that God alone can bring us help and hope and strength. The person who is poor in spirit is the person who has realized that things mean nothing and that God means everything. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. King Solomon wrote many years ago these prophetic words: "Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Do not depend upon your own understanding. Seek His will in all that you do, and He will show you which path to take." May God bless you this week as you learn to depend upon Him.